Well, as we've already mentioned, this month, in the month of January, traditionally, religious science churches around the world are revisiting the first 4 chapters in the textbook that Ernest Holmes wrote. And usually we spend 1 week on each chapter, but next week, because William Tuttle is going to be here, I'm putting 1 and 2 together today. Chapter 3 will be Larry on the 3rd week, and Randy Granger will be doing chapter 4 on the 4th week. So I'm grateful both of them are here. So this will be a very smooth and interesting look at those 4 chapters. Now there's a lot in those 4 chapters. So for us to address the entire chapter or 2 in about 20 to 30 minutes is not easy. So I encourage all of you to spend some time over this month revisiting those 4 chapters, just reading them for yourself. And if you have any questions or thoughts or things that you want to share or talk about, call a practitioner, call me, call Randy, call Larry, those of us that are working on presenting this, and just explore your questions and your ideas. So chapter 1, the thing itself. Now, when I came into religious science, that seemed very odd, the thing itself. What is Ernest Holmes talking about by the thing? The thing is what many of us traditionally have called God, but Ernest Holmes has many synonyms for this thing. Some of them spirit, first cause, mind, love. And so when we're looking at this thing itself, when we talk about new thought and new ideas, it was a new thought or a new idea to think of God as something other than what I call the guy in the sky, and to bring it into this essence of a thing or an it. Now, some people I know were a little offended when they first heard it when it was referred to God. And yet for me, who had gone through many years of trying to figure out how can I relate to this thing and what do I want to call it, to be able to say it was refreshing, to not have to pick a gender or to figure out where I wanted to go with it. But at the same time that Ernest Holmes is not thinking about a person or an entity that is God, Ernest Holmes was teaching that we personify God, each and every one of us. That spirit, that love, that mind is what's moving in and through all of us, what animates us, what gives us life. Holmes said, our mind and spirit is our echo of the eternal thing itself. And the sooner we discover this fact, the sooner we shall be made free and happy. And so essentially that was his way of saying this truth shall make us free. He also referred to this thing as our divine nature. And he concludes chapter 1. See how fast I went through chapter 1? He concludes chapter 1 with the mind which we discover within us is the mind that governs everything. This is the thing itself, and we should recognize its simplicity. So then we move into chapter 2, which is titled The Way It Works. And so what are we talking about then? The way the thing itself works. And what he's sharing with us is that it's simple, that we should look for its simplicity. And so when he's addressing the simplicity, he puts it this way: it reacts to us according to our belief in it, and it is immutable law, subject to the use of the least among us. It is no respecter of persons, it cannot be bound. So in other words, it doesn't matter who we are, what individual on this planet, this thing itself works in and through us the same way for each and every one of us. And it works simply. Now, over the last several years, I've used different metaphors to describe how it is that this works simply. One of them was it's as simple as putting a pot on to boil. When we put a pot on to boil and we've turned the stove on, we don't sit there and wait and watch it boil. I hope we don't. We don't make it boil. We get ready to receive. We get our cup ready, whatever we're going to be making with the boiling water. And it's that simple when we do a treatment. When we release it, it's like putting that pot on to boil. We're ready to receive, and we just let it go and know that it's going to do its thing. I've also said that it's as simple as knowing that the new moon is eventually going to be a full moon again. When we can't see it, we still know it's there. And our faith can be as simple as having faith that that full moon is going to happen again, or that the sun is going to rise the next day. I hope none of us spend any time worrying about how that process is going to take place. We just know it. It's that simple. I've also said it's as simple as riding a bike once we get our chain in alignment. When we get ourselves in alignment with spirit, with the truth of who we are, life moves as simply as that bike once its chain is in alignment with the pedals and or the gears, and we can go forward. Holmes, when he said his words, it reacts to us according to our belief in it, is also paraphrasing in his way what it says in the Christian scriptures, it is done unto us as we believe. And yet, and that's why I went through all this so fast, because this is where I'm going to put my focus. What we believe is the issue. That is the key to how this works, how this thing itself moves through us. So if I say, oh, that will never happen, the universe says, and so it is. And if I say, I'll never be able to, the universe says, and so it is. And I don't know if you noticed the new sign out in the social hall. I had a friend make that for me. She's been watching our talks through YouTube and realized that we always said, and so it is. So she made me that sign that says, and so it is. So I thought I'd bring it in and share it with the center. But that's what the universe says, no matter what it is we believe, no matter what it is that we put out there. Ernest Holmes said, we take the good wherever we find it, making it our own insofar as we understand it. Good is universal, and that as much good as any individual is able to incorporate in his or her life, it is theirs to use. So that's the second piece of how it works. We seek the good wherever we can find it. And what he's referring to here is that it's not just one path, that there's many paths, and we can find good in all of those paths and all of the different ways that people express their good, express that thing itself through them, and we can find good in all of it and take on whichever part of it feels good to us, and we can make it our own good. And so the key then to how it works is what we believe and where we're seeking and finding our good. So did anyone get something of what they wanted over Christmas or over the holidays, whatever you celebrated? Did anybody get something they wanted? Good, okay. Did anyone get something you didn't know you wanted, but now you're glad you have it? And did anyone get something that they didn't really want, but kind of went, oh, thank you? Or did anyone just sit there and not get anything at all that they wanted? Well, that's the way it works. And I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings if you didn't get what you wanted, but this giving and receiving season is a perfect example of how it works, this thing. And part of how it works is, let me ask you a question. What did you ask for? We are one with that creative power. It moves in and through us. It's what the thing itself is part of what we are, and it's how we function in the world. And yet a lot of what we are thinking is deeply hidden back in our subconscious. And so what we're getting is a reflection of some of those deeper thoughts, what we're seeing and what's coming forward. So my first question is, did you even know what you wanted? I have a friend who's trying to figure out what to do with her life, and she said, but I keep getting this, and then this, and then this. And I said, well, do you know what you want? The universe is going, okay, here, oh, okay, here, oh, here. You know, if you don't know what you want, then how can this thing itself bring that forward and bring it to you? So that's the first key. Do you know what you want? And then if you did know what you want, did you ask for it clearly and specifically? Or did you give clear hints about what you wanted? Or did you hope that someone would notice how long you looked at something and that indicated that you really wanted it? And after that, when we talk about someone, did you ask specifically to someone, and did that someone, was that someone that had the capacity to actually provide what you were asking for? And when I say did they have that capacity, I mean, did they not only have the finances, but also the emotional capacity and spiritual capacity to provide what you were asking for? And then, did you narrow what you were asking for to a specific person? Now, what I have come to understand is that if I'm looking to have a specific person give me a specific thing, then what I'm really asking for is what I think that thing symbolizes when they give it to me. For example, I might think that if they give me this, it means they love me. If they give me this, it shows their commitment to me, which then creates for me safety and security. If they give me this thing, it means they care about me. So what I'm really asking for from that specific person with that specific thing, because if it didn't matter who the person was, then anyone could give us that thing and it wouldn't matter. It would have the same meaning. So what I'm really asking for is to be loved. I'm asking to have a show of support in the fact that I'll be safe and secure in this situation with this person, and I'm asking to feel cared for. So did you ask for that specifically? Or do we ask for it roundabout? Ernest Holmes reminds us in How It Works, the second chapter, in our ignorance of the truth, we have misused the highest power we possess. And then he talks about how this power is what can bind us, and it does bind us, and it is the same power that can and will free us. But it's our ignorance of the truth that finds us misusing it and finds us experiencing getting what we don't want or not getting what we want or being in a situation that we're not comfortable in. So what is this truth he's talking about? The ignorance of what truth? I think it's the truth about the thing itself. So we're back to chapter 1. The truth that the thing itself is in and through us, that we are one with that thing. So if it is love that we want, the truth is we already have that. We are that already. And the more that we start to really understand that and live that, the more we become a magnet to draw more love to us. And as we do that, we start to feel loved and feel cared for and feel safe and secure. So essentially, what it is that we really want, we already are. Again, in Holmes's words, when we see it as it is, then we shall see ourselves as we are. And he continues, the thing, then, works for us by working through us and is us always. So once again, we're back to that key then of what is it that we believe, and where are we looking for our good? In the first reading that Barbara did for us, she read the beginning sentences out of the first chapter. And in that he said, we look forward to the day when science and religion shall walk hand in hand through the visible into the invisible. And at this point in time, science is beginning to be able to do that. I found an article, it was actually posted on Facebook, and it was about how they can now measure what it is we really believe in certain areas. They're starting to measure that. The article that was posted is called The Science of Why Cops Shoot Young Black Men. Now I'm going to pause because that sentence, I imagine, might have taken some of our minds off somewhere with our opinions, whatever it is we believe about that phrase. And so I'm going to ask you to bring your minds back here, because what this article shows us, I found really, really interesting, and it fully and completely supports what it is that Ernest Holmes was trying to teach us in these first two chapters. The article was written for Mother Jones magazine, and that might cause another opinion to pop up in your head. It was written by somebody named Chris Mooney, who spelled their name C-R-I-S, so I don't know whether it's male or female who wrote this. December 1st, 2014. The person who wrote this article believed themselves to be a non-prejudicial person. And they were writing the article because they participated in some of these studies and found out that their prejudice was showing up in very subtle ways, in ways that they didn't even know existed. They believed consciously that they were a non-prejudicial person. And now this whole study was focused specifically on white, Caucasian, and black African American, and how we pair and what we think and what goes along with different subtle beliefs. And they do it so fast on the computer that he says, the test measures, or she, the test measures racial prejudices that we cannot consciously control. Now, if you go to understandingprejudice.org, apparently the test is on there. I went to that website to try and see if I could find it. I didn't find the specific test, but I found lots of other interesting things, so I think I just have to dig deeper in there. But if you're interested in observing and looking at your own biases that you might have, that's a very interesting website, understandingprejudice.org. The test is called Implicit Association Test, or IAT. And so the IAT, the Implicit Association Test, tests what you're pairing with things that you see or think are good and what you're pairing with things that you believe are bad or scary. And it does it, like I said, so quickly that subtle things come out that you aren't even aware of. He or she says, we are not born with racial prejudices, and we may never have even been taught them, not actually taught them in the way that we think of being taught. And yet what's happening is that we as human beings tend to categorize everything. We have our good box, our bad box, our safe box, our unsafe box. We have all these different categories, and that's how we as humans work. That's what keeps us safe in the world. That's what helps us to navigate the world. And so categorizing in and of itself is not a bad thing. What this article was pointing out is that when our categorizing goes to the point of creating a prejudice, then it becomes something that actually is detrimental to us, as much as it is to the person that we have this stuck in this box, whatever it is. When we categorize to the point of a prejudice, it also blocks our good in some way. And so what I was seeing as categorizing, I was interpreting as what we call a belief. What are those deep inner beliefs that we have, that we go and work with our practitioner to get rid of, that no longer serve us? Usually that belief is some way that we've categorized the world. Something that's no longer serving us. And it's no longer in our highest good. The article, the person that wrote the article said, here's the good news. Research suggests that once we understand the psychological pathways that lead to prejudice, we just might be able to train our brains to go in the opposite direction. So how we categorize the world is what we believe about the world. And what we believe about the world and how we categorize the world is basically how we react and interact in the world. And we know that what we believe is how it's done to us. So what we believe is constantly being reinforced. And so what this article is saying is that when we learn how to recategorize, when we learn to look for other examples, we can shift our thinking. So the person that did this article and had taken this test was surprised because he or she came out further on the prejudicial scale than they expected. They expected to be lower because in their own consciousness or their own awareness, they were not a prejudiced person. And yet what came out were these subtleties. And so through learning and through repairing certain things in this person's mind, they were actually able to lower where they came out on the scale. They took the test 3 times. And were able to bring their score down to a more acceptable level for this person. So the person says, taking the IAT, the Implicit Association Test, made me realize that we can't just draw some arbitrary line between prejudiced people and unprejudiced people and declare ourselves to be on the side of the angels. Biases have slipped into all of our brains. And that means we all have a responsibility to recognize these biases and to work to change them. Now, at this point, we could say, well, it's not my fault. These biases just slip in there. I didn't even know it was happening. I can't control it. I can't help it. There's nothing that I can do about it. And then we think about what Ernest Holmes says. It is done unto us as we believe. So what do we believe about our beliefs even? What do we believe we can do about our beliefs? To me, that is the point of religious science. That is the point of the way it works. And now science is proving this, that we can change. We can change the way our brains work. We can change the way we react to the world around us. Now, this article focused specifically, like I said, on the prejudice that shows up between how we categorize whiteness or Caucasianness and blackness and African Americanness. But what I know about how our brains work is we categorize everything. We are categorizing everything that comes to us. And those categories that we create can move into the realm of prejudice if we don't pay attention, if we don't bring them into the light. Some of those areas are, like I said, race, but all races. Gender. sexual orientation, ages, what age we are, socioeconomic status, the ways we dress, whether we have a tattoo or not, what hairstyle we have, the job choices we've made or whether we don't work, the education that we have, what we eat or don't eat, those who make rules and those who break rules. Some of us have judgments around the weight that we carry or somebody else carries on our bodies. We also categorize whether we attend the Center for Spiritual Living, Wellspring, or Unity, or some other church or spiritual center. And most of us, if not having judgments, at least have opinions about all of those things and where people stand in that spectrum of what they could be doing in all of those areas. And that's just talking about how we categorize others. But what I also know is that how we categorize others is how we categorize ourselves. We have boxes where we put ourselves. Some of you might have heard these terms: internalized racism, internalized homophobia, internalized sexism. What that means is that we've taken on whatever the race consciousness, as Ernest Holmes would call it, whatever's out there as the belief about what we are, and we've taken it into ourself, even if we are that thing, that whatever it is. And so we have prejudice against ourselves. And not only do we categorize in those kinds of areas, but we also categorize in regard to worthiness. This person's worthy. Am I in the worthiness box or the unworthiness box? This person's good enough. Am I in the good enough box or the not good enough box? And sometimes those beliefs, those categories are so deep that we don't even realize them, that if we took an AIT test in regard to any of those, we would probably find ways of thinking that we had no idea were really deep in there. And like I said, that's because we have been raised in an environment where all of this stuff comes in, and what Holmes called it was race consciousness, the consciousness of the human race around us that seeped into our brains. So all of this can seem overwhelming if we think about all these different areas. And yet the good news is that research is already showing that we can change these things. And the way that we do it is we retrain our brain. And we retrain our brain, it's hard to say that, by repairing. And I thought that was an interesting word when I wrote it out. To repair, meaning we pair what we think is good, and we find new ways of pairing these things with what we think is good or okay or safe. But as we repair, we're repairing our brain. We're essentially taking it back to that original truth. The truth that Holmes said if we are ignorant of, we end up misusing the power. That original truth that says that God, Spirit, life, love is expressing in and through everyone, no matter where they fit into all those categories that we've put them subconsciously in our mind. And so as we can repair these people, these situations, with the original blueprint of perfection, of God expressing, remembering that that person is expressing God as much as I am, that begins to shift how it is we react in this world, how it is we react when we're around people that are different or fall into different categories for us. So we're teaching our brain then to look through the lens of truth, the lens of God is expressing in and through everyone, instead of through the lens that race consciousness has created for us to look through. We then seek to uncover our deepest beliefs, because it's done to us as we believe. We seek to uncover our unconscious prejudices that are blocking us from our truth and from our good, because that is the way that we get to become free. I need a drink. Hold on. After the peace meditation that was at 5 o'clock in the morning last week, those of us that were here went to breakfast at the Village Inn. And here we'd been praying for world peace, seeing all the different areas in the world that we felt needed to have peace instilled in them. That included the United States and the cities and the borderlands here. And after we were done with breakfast, as I was walking out, I saw a man sitting at a table, and he had a ball cap and a sweatshirt on. He was an elderly man. And I'm saying that because we categorize. And what was on his hat and what was on his sweatshirt pushed my buttons. Yeah. I wanted to shift him immediately into the box of intolerant and not safe for me to be around. And I really wanted to confront him on what was on his sweatshirt. And then I realized I was drawing a line in the sand between him and me, putting myself on the side of the angels. I was right and he was wrong. Basically, what I was doing in a split second was doing to him what I was afraid he would do to me if he knew me. I was no better than him. We were one and the same. And I really don't know how he would think if he got to know me and if I got to know him. So I realized in that split second that I still have work to do. I still have my own prejudices that pop up where I categorize people. Ernest Holmes says in How It Works, "As high as we shall make our mark in mind and spirit, so high shall be its outward manifestation in our material world." In other words, how high my consciousness goes is going to be reflected back to me in the material world. And it gets reflected back on ball caps, on shirts, on Facebook postings, all over the place. It gets reflected back to me, and I get to look at where my beliefs are and how those beliefs are causing me to react in the world. Everything out there is a mirror. Everything out there is showing us some aspect of what's going on, even if it's really deep inside us. And what is exciting to me is that once we start to look at and focus on the thing itself, that which we truly are, and that which that gentleman was, what all of you are, the thing itself is expressing in and through each and every person. And then how it works is I have to remember that this is who each person is, and that our brains can realign with that one mind, with that truth. I can repair, I can look for other ways to believe about the people that I see and the situations that show up in my face. And so it really is as simple as returning to the truth of your being, and yet it is also not easy to undo race consciousness, to rewire our brains, to find out what it is we really believe and find new ways of believing. So as we all look in this mirror that I call life, the mirror of life as it reflects all this stuff back to us, I suggest that we start off by being gentle with ourselves, because we can realize that everyone has race consciousness, has these biases that have been integrated into our thinking. And as you look in that mirror, look at yourself and start with being that love that you want to experience for yourself, recognizing that you already have that love within. And as that love grows, you can then start to reframe the other stuff that's showing up in that mirror. You can start to retrain your brain to move into that place where you want it to be. You can dig out those old beliefs that are no longer serving and find the things that need to be shifted, repaired, because it really is true that if you change your thinking, you change your life. And so it is.